Can I control the sharing functionality? It's okay like this?
Yes, we see it already.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for the invitation for this group and for my presentation. I'm very honored with this. I came, philosophically speaking, from Hegel, and also from students of Hegel, I could say so, which was Gotthard Günther, which was a very important man in the context of the Macy conferences and the debates on the status of cybernetics in the biological laboratory, biologic computer laboratory of Heinz von Foerster. And that is the connection between my own philosophical formation and constructivism and second-order science. I will make my presentation based on three main parts. A first part, which is a conversation on duties. A second part, the need for second-order normative learning. And the third part, which is devoted to future work on special fields, specially related to normative learning. I will begin with a fictional conversation on duties between a fictional character, let's us call her Jeanette, and the therapist. Jeanette asks the therapist if he did understand the intention of her deed. The therapist replied, "People observe your deceiving acts and have no clues about your intentions. What did you expect from me? I did everything with the sincerest resolution." Well, that might be the case, but it is not my opinion that is at stake here. Look at Peter. Perhaps he is not so sincere in his intentions as you are, but he does what is intended from him. What can I do? People are blaming me for my lack of social empathy, and I feel myself demotivated in my work and family life. And the therapist replies, "Try to act ruled not only by your goodwill, but also on the ground of what the others expect from you." Sorry, I cannot understand your recommendation. Take the role of the others. That means imitation. Should I emulate Peter? No. You must create your own modal schemes to deal with expectations. How? Act as if your action should have a meaning for yourself through the eyes of the others. Should I learn how to rebuild the field of my possibilities to include the others' expectations as a second-order source of duties? Yes, you got it right. But if you assume this duty, you will need to do more than just recognize it inwardly. I understand. I need to embody the duty, the second-order duty, or to put it in practice, which ultimately means learning to learn. And the therapist concludes, a new scheme for the formation of duties will emerge. As a result of such learning, you will feel much better with yourself and the others. Well, we hope so. And I concluded from this fictional situation some theoretical consequences. The first, the syncretic fusion of the psychological and social persona is a symptom of a pre-modern normativity. In a functional differentiated society, a notion that comes from Luhmann, especially from Luhmann, normative learning entails the understanding of duties and rights from a reflective perspective about the source of validity of the norms. Duties and rights should be understood across the interplays of psychological and social persona as a contrastic background that is learned. The fusion second consequence, the fusion of the personalities and its manifestation in behavior reveals difficulties in the learning of norms and produces paradoxical situations very similar to those already portrayed by Gregory Bateson, such as the paradoxes arising from the fusion between message and meta-message, map and territory, and the double binds, and Václavic's pathological systems in interactional communication. Here lies also what I have identified as motivational stress. In the field of therapy and counseling, second-order observation is disclosed whenever an individual opens its views assuming the role of the other and the possibilities open to action from the other's horizon. Taking the role of the other is not equivalent to repression, a passive imitation of a model, or identification. I call recursive behavior the inducement of actions that can be perceived by the agent as contributing for the recovery from a situation of conflict due to its own communicative epistemic biases or blockages. Here, one can see the formation of duties toward oneself and toward the others as outcomes of second-order observation or meta-communication in Václavic's terminology. Such duties are like therapeutic rules. Regarding the motivational dimension, the recursion through second-order therapy points to the diffusing of the motive's initial blended structure. Second-order practice is relevant in many fields where counseling intervenes, such as family therapy, counseling in organizations, or personal-oriented therapy. From this situation and from the need for normative learning, I came also to the identification of three main fields that need development, theoretical development. A first field is what I called modality, the problem of modalities in second-order cognition. The second-order observations are embedded in theories, description in theories, but also in a variety of systems. It is not only a theoretical dimension. Particularly in meaning systems, psychic and social systems, second-order observations are mechanisms signaling the evolutionary covariation of the system and its environment, and are vital for the system's acquisition of operative self-reference and the cognitive construction of its own borders. Through second-order observations, the modal distinctions of actual, potential, virtual, real of a first-order distinction re-enters and is redefining modal terms. Through temporalized re-entries, one gains access, especially in meaning systems, to the former possibilities of a previous actual state of the system and can redefine its horizon of expectations, but also reconceive cognitive, normative, and catectic orientations for action in interaction systems. In formal organizations, this can mean reconfiguration of priorities in planning. Thus, second-order stances promote personal, organizational, and systemic change through modal change. A second field of theoretical development, I would call it embodiment. And my point of departure here is the work of Varela, Francisco Varela. Varela's approach to embodiment and embodied cognition is a proposal to tackle problems in philosophy of science after the crisis of cognitivism and to overcome the fragilities of some explanations of emergence. The search for a coherence between scientific explanation and human experience demanded an ontological and epistemological monist approach to cognition and second-order cognition. For our purposes, embodiment is not the opposite model of second-order science. Quite the contrary, it means the incorporation of second-order views in the action of a subject that has accepted the consequences of the modal change in its motives. One can speak of an embodiment of second-order views. Embodiment has another important application in the study of systems change by emphasizing the intertwinement of a first-person standpoint and reflected views on learning capabilities. Embodiment of second-order views is a deuteral learning, a second learning level, according to Bateson terms, a deuteral learning sign and inducer of second-order new cognitive capabilities. And the third level of theoretical development, semiotics, semiotics of structural couplings. Constructivist approaches are sensitive to problems of complexity, but complexity would be a vague name without the identification of the great diversity of systems concretely operating in with different assumptions on what is real, because there is not a big reality. Some of these systems structurally depend on each other to process their operations, which means that they can be conceived as structurally coupled, such as psychic and social systems. Structural couplings have special cognitive and evolutionary features, which can be made responsible for a co-evolution. But couplings don't mean a uniform or merging domain. Rather, the coupled systems, psychic or social systems, for instance, have autopoietic autonomy. Processes and events in the environment of a system are relevant for the system if, and only if, I would add, if the system has sufficient sign interpretants for the same processes or events in its code. This means a semiotic reconstruction of Luhmann's cognitive openness of systems through a new focus on semiotic codes in systems that operate under structural couplings. That has, of course, big consequences in action systems. The introduction of Peircean sign interpretants into the description of the evolutionary formation of meaning in systems turns the semiotic view into a reflective and adaptive cycle of transmission of information. Also, this involves second-order observations in action. I would conclude with the idea that semiotics, systems theory, and second-order cybernetics are complementary. Thank you very much for your attention.